Welcome to the Learning Can't Wait podcast, a Full Mind production. At Full Mind, our vision is to ensure every child has access to an exceptional education. Each episode, we will be joined by pathfinders within and around the education space who are bringing about transformational change on behalf of deserving students. I am your host, Haley Spirabauer. Welcome back, everybody, to the Learning Can't Wait podcast. We have another incredible guest here today. I feel so grateful every time I get to introduce someone like this guest. We have Sheridan Hotung, a certified academic language therapist, here with us today. Welcome, Sheridan.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I am so happy that you're here. I really love a lot of what I learned about what you're doing, what you're building, why you're doing it. And I'm excited for our audience to learn all about it as well. But can you start us off with our typical first question? How did you come to be the personal and professional version of yourself?
So I think that came unexpectedly through my children who were not reading. And since I'm somebody who grew up on books and would hole away in a nook every summer, to not have this joy transfer over to your children is a bit shocking. So when my children couldn't read and they were behaving in ways that were alarming and scary to any parent, but for me, certainly as a first-time parent, behavior like headbanging and unable to speak and missing all the milestones, that was just shocking to me. I didn't know what to do and I wasn't equipped to handle it. So I did a week's course of Orton Gillingham and I thought I knew everything, only to discover I knew nothing. But that said, I kind of threw in my career at Cartier in PR and kind of waltzing around in stilettos. And I traded that in for a Montessori degree. And I loved what I was doing. And I really started to see the power of different pathways into the brain, kinesthetic, auditory, visual, and just how essential that is for learning. And then my children started to flourish. And as a classroom teacher, I started to see other children who were struggling. And that helped me so much to pursue this passion. But I went through the same difficult, difficult conversations with their teachers who were telling me they couldn't read, they were missing the milestones, they were misbehaving in class, they were having social problems, they were getting beat up in the bathroom, just all these social cues they were missing. And finally, I just kind of had to pause and stop and really get with the neuropsych who could tell me what was happening to my children. And that's how I came to learn about Orton Gillingham and really dive into a degree that was going to equip me to help my kids. My daughter was in 7th grade reading as a first grader. Amazingly, she was still getting A's, which
Isn't that amazing? I have so many thoughts about that.
Oh my gosh, it's
right.
But
it's also the almost exact same story as a family friend of mine, right? So continue what you're sharing because I'm like locked in. Keep going.
Yeah. And I was like, how is this possible? And you sit at these IEP meetings and you're being told, well, they're hitting 80%. And I'm like, okay, well, like if you read the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and you read 80% of that, are you going to get the full message? No, you're not. So why is that acceptable?
Mm-hmm.
And so I made the move to homeschool my kids. And this was pre-COVID. So homeschooling wasn't a thing. And it was honestly the best thing I ever did. It was so empowering to really take responsibility and figure out where they were missing key foundational skills. And it was like a 4-year journey. I basically did it until I couldn't handle the math anymore. a little hard, but anyway, it was the best thing I ever did. And my daughter came out of that much stronger. However, she was still kind of like at 90%. We were not closing the gap. Now, her dream had always been to be a doctor or someone in the medical profession, and that just completely slipped away. She didn't want to go to school. Uh, she was depressed. It was heartbreaking for a parent to see their child like dressing up in scrubs from 2 years old to just watching that dream wash away was heartbreaking. And so I called every school in my area and none of them would accept her. Private schools were just like, I'm sorry, we cannot help her. And then out of the blue, I got an email from a school in New Jersey and that said they'd like to meet her. And I don't even really remember, I must have been sending mass emails out, but they called me and they said, send us her report. And I sent the 40-page report and they were like, does she have some behavioral issues? Like, what's the problem here? And I'm like, no, she's like the nicest, kindest, sweetest kid. And I know she's mine and I'm biased, but she really is. And they said, well, we'd like to meet her. So I drove to New Jersey. She spent the she spent the week at this school and came out a different person. The Cambridge School in Pennington, New Jersey just transformed her life. And so she and I moved to New Jersey in the middle of COVID. I left my two other children back in Virginia, and she and I just bunked up in a rental and I took her to school every day. And I thought to myself, like, what about the kids and the parents who can't do this? This is not okay. Like, nobody should have to pick up and move 2, 3 states, 300 miles for a basic human right of learning how to read. And so this is where I really started to dig in with my students. While Saskia was just entrenched with the right teachers, the right training, the right knowledge, I stepped back and did my own certification. And when I started to get my own students, we started to play games and I was looking at Scarborough's rope and trying to figure out how can I make my game align with Scarborough's rope so that we can address and target these skills. And that's how I came to create the games that I have made. Now, I feel really good about these games because when my kids ask to play them, I know that something really powerful is going on in their brain and connections are being made that just aren't happening in the classroom. But more important than that, I wanted to create a resource for parents and teachers who could just pick it up and go with it. Parents, teachers, they're busy. They don't have time to do 10 hours of professional development. They don't have time to do 2 hours. They need resources that are ready to go. And that's what I sought to create. And my goal is really world literacy. I want everybody to have this tool at an accessible price. And that's really been my whole goal the last 6 years.
Thanks for sharing that story and for the vulnerability in highlighting how you felt as a parent, as someone who really wanted to care for your child deeply. And so many parents do. And you're right, not all of them know how to access the resources to help their child, nor do they even know what's going on. I mentioned that I had a similar story. I was when I was still in New York City and working in public schools in New York City, I was tutoring for a family friend whose daughter was at what is widely regarded one of the best private schools in the country in New York City in 8th grade. And I began tutoring her and knew within one session there was something amiss with why she couldn't read on grade level, was getting straight A's at that school.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And immediately, you know, as a teacher, you can't actually tell parents in New York to go get a dyslexia neuropsych evaluation. but this wasn't my student in the school, so I could. I turned to my family friend. I said, "You're going to need to go get a neuropsych now." And immediately they did, and she was diagnosed with dyslexia. And I no longer tutor her because I'm not OG certified. I'm not Wilson. I'm not anything. But it led me to believe, and I'm curious what you think. It led me to believe that every single student should be screened for dyslexia, dyscalculia, and all of these other disabilities, or actually we'll get to that topic in a second because I want to take an asset-based approach to this, but all of these other conditions that students have that impede their ability to acquire information. So what do you think about that? Should we have every kid screened?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The things that we can avoid by just administering a simple screener, it's beyond academics. It's mental, emotional, it's everything. It's how they value themselves and the impact that it has, not just on the child, but on the family, on the siblings, on the next generation. It is so simple to administer. And then find these kids who are brilliant. They're brilliant. I've learned so much from these kids. And then just get them exactly what they need and not have them stigmatized as like learning disabled or different or deficient in some way. We've decided that our world is a reading world, but if we decided our world was an art world, I mean, how many of us would be disabled, right? But this isn't a disability. It really is a gift, but we know how to fix it, and we can fix it with a simple screener and then appropriate intervention.
You started to mention here that we shouldn't view it as a disability, which I believe in as well. I read an article in Nature a couple of years ago about taking an asset-based approach to dyslexia, and how society really is framing this incorrectly. Have you read any pieces like that, or had any thoughts along the same lines?
I mean, I've certainly been in those conversations through my teacher transformation mentorship groups. All of us are on board thinking it should be measured by assets for sure.
So
I
let's,
would love to see that article though.
yeah, I'll make sure to share it. So let's talk a little bit here about what you've created and who you're trying to get it in the hands of, because I'm super excited about that aspect of your work.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, I started thinking about getting my message out. And of course, everybody's like, oh, you should do a TED Talk and this, that, the other. So I just started to write that. And the facts that I found out about the statistics and the pathway to prison with dyslexia made my blood boil. I was so angry to read that wardens will check NAEP scores and check high school dropout rates in order to prepare for their next shipment of beds. It just made me sick. And that's when I started to think, well, gosh, like how many people are in the prisons and what is that population and why are they there? Like, we're not all bad. Like, everybody really wants to do good and contribute. Every child in my classroom wants to show up and be successful. And these people did too, but the system failed them. And so I started to think about, well, okay, how can I create a tool that would be something they could implement immediately? One thing that really stood out to me is that the products that are available are very cartoony and bubbly and childlike. And this is just a turn off. I mean, forget about it if you're 15, like if you're 30, like how just shameful does that feel to have to deal with that kind of material? And so when I created my tools, I created them in watercolors, in beautiful, real depictions of animals. That's my Montessori background. Everything needs to be real and true and something you can find in the world. And I structured everything around uh, making a connection. So my game boards are really focused on nature and an easy conversation. So if the first game board has pets on it, you can have that conversation with a 5-year-old, a 15-year-old, or a 50-year-old. Like, do you like pets? Have you ever had pets? Tell me about the colors you see in this, and just starting to create conversation. One of my students, you know, that week in school where everybody has to read however many pages and they've got teams.
Of course.
Okay, all my students hate this week. It is a nightmare. But one of my students told me just to get through it, she reads to her fish so they don't laugh at her. And you just like let that sit on your soul for someone to have to say that, and how much shame and just negative feeling comes from having to say, I have to read to my fish because basically everybody else is going to laugh or make fun of me. So I really wanted to reach a population, and animals are a great way to do that. Keeping it real is a way to do that. And in the last 6 months, I've connected with my alma mater. I went to Georgetown, and I got one of those alum invitations to attend a prison exoneree fireside chat. And this is a class that's offered at Georgetown called Making an Exoneree. And these are wrongfully convicted people. And it's really interesting if you follow their path and listen to their stories. It always comes down to education and lack of resources. And so I was invited to do a lecture there on just like on a Tuesday night. And I went and I talked to a small group of these inmates about metacognition and just talking about, how do you learn? Like, what do you find works for you? And so many of them had the mindset that, well, I just thought I had to sit and take notes, but I didn't know how to spell anything. I couldn't really keep up. And so I just tuned out. And when you start to explore the other pathways of learning, and they're so curious and they want to know so much more. And I had a 20-year-old man say to me, I think I'm dyslexic. Like, he didn't even know until that
Great.
moment in the conversation. I had a 60-year-old man say to me, just like with pleading eyes, could you teach me to read? Could I still learn? And just the heartbreak of how different their lives could have been. A couple of weeks after this talk, they had their holiday party, which was basically Cheetos and water. And they all were receiving actually a certificate of accomplishment because they had completed a course that Georgetown gives to incarcerated individuals. They're part of a program called Georgetown Scholars, and they're taught by Georgetown professors with other Georgetown students. And I brought my daughter, and she's now 20, and I introduced her to some of the inmates. And there was a woman there that I introduced her to. And I said, you are no different from her. She's white, you're white. She's curious, you're curious. The only difference were the resources. And she's here and you're not. And that just seems so unfair and avoidable. And so now we're talking about creating a pilot with these inmates, and we just have a lot of really exciting conversations going on about how to reach these inmates, how to even take the literate inmates and kind of use them as an army and a force for good to pull the others to a baseline level of literacy. And so I'm talking to, judges and professors in this space, and it's just so exciting, and there's so much passion because these inmates are our kids of yesterday.
Yeah, I appreciate so much about how you are able to see in the world the place that you fit to help, because we need more helpers. We need more folks that are really passionate and deeply committed to doing this work. I hear that story and I think about my own experience at Full Mind, where we work with incarcerated youth and the challenges that they face. But I also think about an episode I hosted in season 1 with the School Justice Project, which is a group of lawyers who do work to ensure that students who are incarcerated get their full services that are mandated by their IEPs.
Oh, amazing.
Learning about especially what happened during the pandemic and the kind of illegal ways that students were denied their guaranteed rights was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So I can really connect to what you're sharing there. Sheridan,
Yeah.
what's up in the future other than this project that you're excited about? How will this work shift and evolve for you?
So what I'm really hoping is that, the screeners that have been created, that are these 10-minute screeners that separate dyslexic students from non-dyslexic students, can really infiltrate not just the prison systems, but also the schools and the neuropsych offices, so that teachers, parents can get information quickly and not have to wait on 6 to 8 month waiting lists. Time is so critical, and we need to be able to administer it quickly. I want to be able to get my resources into teachers' hands, wardens' hands, parents' hands. So again, they can just play this at the table, and it's casual and it's fun. And Hugh Katz said at a conference that I attend every year, the Big Sky Literacy Conference out in Montana, he was asked, how many dyslexics are there in a group? And he answered, well, how many do you want there to be? If you get the information and the remediation in early childhood learning, you're going to have a far less problem in 4th grade. Our 4th grade teachers, they think everybody's reading. They now need, it's no longer learning to read, it's reading to learn. And our 4th grade teachers have non-readers on their hands. And so they can't even move forward in their curriculum. So we really need to get these screeners in the hands of, the people who can really make the difference. The teachers, the parents, administrators are huge. I don't fully understand why it's so difficult. It seems so simple on this side, but there's so much red tape. I don't fully understand it.
I have that hope as well, that we will have screeners in everyone's hands, and appreciate you sharing that with me and with our audience. I'm curious, Sheridan, what advice you would give a teacher who's starting their career today, who might not yet know who in their class has a dyslexia diagnosis because they haven't yet been diagnosed?
Yeah, absolutely. Dyslexia is, well, reading is the foundation for every subject. So it doesn't matter if you're a math teacher or a history teacher or an English teacher. Language is a fundamental piece of all learning. And so a teacher starting out today, I would just encourage her to familiarize herself with Orton Gillingham. It doesn't mean she needs to get certified, but at least look for the symptoms. Find, I even have on my website like a checklist, and it's not just like like an academic social, and it's not just an academic checklist. It's a checklist that addresses social issues, even day to day, like, can your child tie their shoe? Now, that in and of itself doesn't mean someone's dyslexic, but if that's an ongoing struggle, there is something going on there. If somebody is saying aminal instead of animal, there's something going on there. And how they even react and respond to certain situations. Do they have outbursts or are they calm? This can allude to other comorbidities that go along with dyslexia. And so I would really encourage any teacher to find out the symptoms, not just on an academic level. Another really important question is it in the family? Because if it's in the family, it's genetic. And that's where we're seeing, especially in some of our impoverished communities, just so much illiteracy because we have dropouts and they're going to meet with other dropouts and the cycle continues. But we can break it just if we take the time to remediate and target it correctly.
Amazing. Sheridan, you are such a wealth of knowledge, and I'm so grateful you spent your time with us today on the Learning Can't Wait podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Haley. It was really a pleasure.
And thank you to everybody for tuning in. Thanks for listening to the Learning Can't Wait podcast. If you like what you heard, please rate, review, and share this episode. Be the first to know when we have a new episode by subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or have a suggestion for an episode, email us at podcast@fullmindlearning.com.